Hey guys, welcome into today's video. This is going to be a brand new series on my channel. It's going to be a foundation a day for 42 days. The reason that I wanted to start this video is that I have 51 foundations in my permanent collection. It's the number 2 item, maybe number 1 right now, of makeup that I really like testing. I'm really into testing new foundations. It switches back and forth usually between blush, eyeshadow, and foundation, my 3 favorite makeup categories, probably a lot of people's favorite makeup categories. But 51 foundations is just too much for me to have in my collection. I recently did a makeup declutter, and I will link that up in the cards, where I went through my whole collection and I decluttered, breaking some of my makeup into 3 different categories: keep, declutter, and then I made up a third, which was items that I want to keep for reference but I'm going to take out of my permanent collection and move into the closet, where I keep makeup that I think is popular, relevant, things that I may want to reference in future videos but that I don't want to use in my personal everyday life. But I did not do that with foundation. And recently I've gone through a really big skin change. In the last 8 months to a year, I have gone from really dry skin to very oily skin, and a lot of foundations that used to work for me that were more on the dewy natural finish side just aren't working these days. So I'm grabbing and loving more matte foundations. So some of my foundations in my collection predate my skin change. So the reason for this series, I don't want to just declutter foundations based on memory. I want to retest a lot of them because some of them are pretty expensive. Some of them I may re-love, some of them I may not like or may not work for me now, and it's time to make that determination. So while I have 51 foundations in my collection, this is foundation a day for 42 days because there are 9 foundations I have already made a decision on. Some of them I'm actually testing. They haven't gone into speed reviews, but I've worn them very recently, so I know exactly how I feel about them, but I will have to move them into wherever they're going to go, keep, declutter, or in the reference pile. And then there are some that I'm testing that I already absolutely love, haven't gone into a speed reviews, and I know that I'm going to be keeping them. And then 2 of them I have already made the decision that I'm going to declutter. Hey guys, welcome to day 7. Today I'm targeting a drugstore foundation. It's the Maybelline Fit Me. This one is the Dewy and Smooth version. The reason that I decided to do this one next for day 7 is because this is an older one in my collection. I feel like I'm targeting at this point some of the older ones that I have instead of just picking it based on feeling. We'll see where that takes me. I don't know how long that'll last, but this particular one hasn't really been grabbed by me since I had more dry skin. So now that my skin is pretty oily, dewy, and smooth, which is made for normal to dry skin, may not work at all. We're going to give it the test and make the decision today. So let's talk a little bit about this foundation. So generally it retails for $9.99. It comes in, I believe, 24 shades. I have mine in the shade 115 Ivory. I'm not sure what the shelf life is on this because it doesn't say, but I imagine it's a 12-month shelf life. Again, I can't tell where this is made because it's not listed on the bottle or online, but this Dewy and Smooth version has an SPF 18 that's supposed to hydrate and smooth skin texture. It's supposed to be natural, radiant, and moisturizing, ideal for normal to dry skin. It's supposed to blend seamlessly with a lightweight and comfortable fit. It's fragrance-free, non-comedogenic, and allergy-tested, suitable for sensitive skin. This is the kind that doesn't come with a pump, so I've never purchased one for it. I've always just kind of poured it out on the back of my hand. This is one that I don't remember being overly dewy or overly hydrating like all day, but I remember it working fairly well. It wasn't one of my drugstore favorites. I will have some of those coming up. I do believe this is oxidized because it has that SPF in it, so it's a little bit darker than it was when I started. However, it can be sheared out to the point where it still works on my skin tone. So I'm going to apply one side with a brush, we'll do the other side with a sponge, we'll do a check-in, we'll see how it looks. It honestly looks like more radiance with the sponge, which, I don't know, sometimes soaks it up. Less radiance with the brush. But boy, I love this amount of coverage. It actually does look like it's smoothing a lot of the texture on my skin. So far, it's actually very beautiful, much more beautiful than I remember it being. So of course, on my oily skin, I'm interested to see how long it lasts. Okay, I jumped ahead and I just finished my complexion. Well, I just finished all of my makeup. I'm honestly really surprised at how beautiful this looks because I don't remember it looking this beautiful. I mean, it seems to sink into the skin pretty darn well and look like basically a second skin. You know, the one thing that I remember about this foundation still kind of holds true right now is that I don't find this overly dewy. I find it smooth, but I just don't find it as dewy as some of my actually dewy foundations. I don't know if you guys have found that with this, but even when I had dry skin, I don't remember this being overly dewy. Now, can it get dewier as the day goes on? I don't know. I think time will tell with that. Obviously, we're gonna do a full day's wear test today. I'm just not convinced that this is necessarily dewy as this claims to be. I've been testing a ton of foundations lately, and one stark contrast is how something blurs my skin or smooths it out, and then the ones that just really emphasize texture. And this one is on the more smooth, blurring side. I really like the complexion. I can't say this isn't performing the way that some of my high-end, more expensive foundations are performing, and I was pretty much convinced I wasn't gonna hold on to this, and every time I do that to myself, I find I make the opposite decision, which is ironic, but also the reason that I do these videos. So here's how I like to handle the wear test. I do a check-in in natural light for you guys. It is pretty darn early in the morning. It is just past 8 o'clock. Not super early, but meaning like I'm getting ready for the day. So I like to do my first check-in in natural light as much as I can. It has been so gloomy and humid lately. There's not a ton of natural sunshine out right now. It's pretty overcast. But I do want to try and do as much of a natural light check-in as I can for you. I also do a natural light check-in around the 4-hour mark. And then the big determination comes at the at least 8-hour mark, where we come back, sit down here in front of the camera. I show you how the complexion looks, how the foundation has held up, and we decide whether or not this stays in my permanent collection or goes. I'm telling you guys, even though I'm looking at it now, even though it was darker, like on the swatch, it's not too dark. Like once it gets to the skin, it definitely like doesn't oxidize more or looks much more ivory and to my natural complexion than I think it looks in here in the tube. So anyway, I have a sneaking suspicion that this one's gonna end up staying just because it makes my face look so smooth. The only way this probably isn't gonna end up staying is if it ends up getting really, really dewy, or too dewy for me, for someone with oily skin, and also if it tends to like fade off after 3 or 4 hours, then I probably won't keep it in my collection, but we're gonna see. I'm out of here for now. You guys will see me in 8 hours, and then I'll show you the check-ins that I did. Welcome back to 7:30. It's probably been around, I wanna say 11 hours, maybe a little over 11 hours. So I will talk a little bit through me showing you guys the check-in that I did in natural light right after application. Now, the second one was a little bit more difficult because the sun was very low. It was really overcast. I was trying to do it in natural light as much as I could at 4 hours, but it wasn't coming through on my phone very well because there wasn't a ton of natural light to be had. But the overall effect of it was exactly what I thought it was gonna be, which is what I said initially, that it's just not overly dewy on me. Surprisingly, it's not as dewy as you'd think it would be with a name like Dewy and Smooth. Now, the reason that I picked up the Dewy and Smooth version is because the Poreless and Matte at the time when I bought this was not something I would have reached for. I just had very, very dry skin, and I stayed away from foundations like that all of the time. Now that my skin has changed, I definitely went into this with different thinking. Now, of course, this is pretty much what I would stay away from. I don't think that I got overly oily with this, even though it was very humid outside and I was outside quite a bit. The thing that I noticed is it faded off really, really fast. I'd say there's just not a ton of coverage left, and I did end up powdering. And the very first thing I noticed with this is, remember what I was telling you guys initially when I put this on, is how even though it was more oxidized here, it ended up looking pretty ivory on me. And then I got out in natural sunlight and I could see kind of an obvious line where it was so much darker. So if that tells you how much has actually come off on my face, that really should help, because it was a shade darker than what I normally reach for, and even more dark than my neck. It was just obviously dark. And so because this is on the older side, because I think this oxidizes on your face, and because I think it's oxidized in the component, and just because this is not my favorite formula in like anything dewy or smoothing, and I've kept a couple that are fairly similar to this in terms of lighter coverage but a little bit more natural of a finish, I am going to declutter this one today. So this makes 4 decluttered and 3 held onto. Surprisingly, some of the 3 that I've held onto very similar to this foundation. So, however, I want to mention that I highly recommend this if you're not looking for something to last all day, and if you do have dry skin. I feel like this is awesome. Comes with vitamin E, a little slight bit of SPF. It was still very natural looking on the face. I would just say this oxidizes pretty fast. It also doesn't mesh with my own oils and make me more oily. So I feel like this is a foundation in whatever finish it comes in that is good for a variety of different complexions, different skin types. And I feel like for $9.99, this shouldn't be overlooked, because some of my foundations perform very similar to this. Like the Pat McGrath, for example, I feel like was relatively similar in terms of coverage level, longevity, the way that it looked on my skin, and I think Pat McGrath was 64 to this $9.99. So I feel like this is a lesson in the fact that drugstore can do a really good job. I'm just personally not going to hold on to this because I don't want to keep too many in my collection that are in this kind of natural dewy finish. Plus this is older than 12 months. So that one makes 4 decluttered and 3 kept. It makes me feel good that I am choosing not to keep that one, and I don't feel bad about it. I hope you enjoyed today's video, you guys. I hope you let me know in the comments what you think of this series, what other videos that you've watched of these series, if you're hoping to see more, what you're hoping I end up trying on next. You can leave that in the comments. I'd love to know. You do see all the foundations that I have in my collection that I'm going to test in this 42 days of foundation at the very intro of the video. So if you see one in there that I haven't already posted, please do let me know in the comments. You can propel me into the next foundation that I end up trying on. But as always, if you guys are not currently subscribed, I would love to see you subscribe so you can stick around for days 8 through 42 of foundation, a day for 42 days. I am out of here, and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Bye guys.